Okay, good morning everybody. I think we're going to get started. Today we're going to broadcast live and also record today's class for two reasons. One reason is because on Wednesday of this week we're going to be joining a Hangout on Air with other educators in the field of language learning, language teaching. And I included a link in Schoology. Have you guys seen the link in Schoology? I do updates where you guys can access this event. You don't have to do anything in class. In fact, the day that we're connected, you probably will be better off not using your computers, so we're not using extra broadband, so that we can hopefully use all the broadband that we need to connect here. So we're going to be connecting as a group, not individually. Hopefully it'll look something like this, except today we're initiating the Hangout, but on Wednesday someone else is initiating, and we're joining the Hangout with hopefully other people. I participated in one last week, and I went fine. Basically, what you can expect here at the bottom is you'll see the people here, and all the people that sign into the Hangout will appear down here. So for us, even though you could join the Hangout, since we're all here together as a group, we will only be joining once as a whole group. Again, my preference is not to connect online during our class on Wednesday, so we can just focus on this. And again, we should be able to see all the individuals here that have joined. So what happens is when somebody talks, whoever's talking at that time will appear up here. How many of you participated in a Hangout on Air before? Either in class or outside of class? No. Okay. So more or less, this is what you can expect. Typically, the audio is really good and the video is really good if we have broadband. Everything's dependent on the internet, right? So we're going to pray to the technology guys on Wednesday that everything goes smoothly with regard to technology. But we should. I'm going to be positive, optimistic, and everything's going to go just perfectly on Wednesday. So today is being recorded, and we're broadcasting live. But again, the reason is one is to test the equipment to make sure everything is okay. I had to come in earlier and install a plug-in and all of that, so everything I think is okay. But I do want to see how it ends up recording, and yeah. And the second reason we're going to record today is because I think a lot of the content that we talk about today is important, something that you probably might want to refer back to later from your house, thinking, okay, what are we talking about? What was that when he said this? Let me go back and check this again. So you have this recording available if you need to. Okay. Now, one of the things that you can do with this that we're going to do today that we probably won't do much on Wednesday is a screen share. So pretty much the rest of today's class will be showing my screen, right? Not showing me here, like kind of black and not very, like the resolution's horrible and all that. So we're going to be actually doing a screen share, so that you can see basically what I'm projecting on the screen. Okay, so now it's showing whatever we're showing here, okay, on the screen. Now this is, just by the way, this is a really good tool for those of you who want to either record your class or even record just a video showing maybe a tutorial for your students. This is something that you might want to use. All right, today we're going to talk about the organization of your theory and a little bit about academic writing. Some things you've probably heard in academic writing already. Some things you've probably heard a lot of in the Rédaction composition class. You guys took it in the fourth semester. Remember that class a long time ago? All right. Some of your notes that you have from that class might serve you well while you prepare as you write your participatory action research paper. Might also help you in your academic writing course. But everything that I talk about is things you've already heard. There's really shouldn't be anything new. with regard to what we talked about today with your academic writing. Now, the first thing I want to draw your attention to is in Schoology. And I had it up. Let's see if I can get back to it. This is. Okay, in Schoology, actually, let me go to the template first. Now, the template that all of you should have copied and pasted over to your Google Drive document should look something like this. Again, I recommend keeping all the text in there until you've completed each section. Then you can eliminate the text. The text that is in the template is a guide. It's there to say, okay, this is what you need to include in this section. So the one thing that I want to talk about first is the problem and the argument template. And this is a link that takes you to Schoology. And we'll go over every aspect here, but I created a video last semester, about how to create a problem and an argument. This is a template, an idea, a way that you can connect or create, I should say, basically an argument. And that is, think of your 800 words for your theory for this paper as an argument essay, a short argument essay. Argument in regard to what? The thesis statement. So your thesis statement in your introduction paragraph, right? And we're going to come back to this argument here in a minute. The first thing I want to talk about is the introduction paragraph. So what do you include in the introduction paragraph? Let me bring this up just a little bit larger. All right, I'm going to kind of give you a roadmap of things to consider for each of your paragraphs. So the very first paragraph of your theoretical framework, type of thing you talk about. Okay, introduction paragraph. All right, we should include 3 things in your introduction paragraph. The very first thing is what? The hook, right, yes, the hook. The hook is the first thing that you want to include in your introduction paragraph. There are 3 ways that we can hook your audience. To hook your audience means to what?
To catch their attention.
Right, to get their attention, to say, hey, I have something important to say, pay attention to me. That is the objective of the very first sentence, the hook of your introduction paragraph. So we have 3 ways we can hook the audience. The first way, any ideas? With a question. Or we can ask a question. What's another way? All right, I'm going to say here famous quote. So yes, it's not probably not just any old quote, but a famous quote from a famous person, right? Or famous quote. And the third option.
I don't know, but like a sentence that includes numbers like statistics.
So you can say relevant or important statistic, fact, etc. Now this is something that is think of the wow factor, like wow, I didn't know that like 4 out of 5 teachers get paid, very low or whatever. Right? Something really interesting. So a fact, a statistic, some important piece of information that makes the person say, wow. It's not just a quote. It's not just stating any type of information. Try to either hook your audience by presenting a question, a relevant, famous quote, or a relevant statistic. Now in your notes, the only of these 3 that require a citation, that is APA, citation would be what? When I say citation, I mean in parentheses, the author's last name, the year, and in the references, you would also have that person. What of those 3 would you think where you would need a citation? Question, famous quote, or statistic, right? A statistic. Yeah. Yes? So the famous quote, we don't need a citation. If you want to put the person's name, that's fine. But you don't have to put the person's name in parentheses. You can just put io medio, y su nombre, yeah. You can just put that. You don't have to put a citation. When I say citation, I mean parentheses, the author's last name, and the year. That's only for the statistic, okay? All right. This is the first part of your introduction. One sentence only. One sentence with the audience, and that's it. Now, what do we follow up with after the background? Background information. Problem with that, or some background context of the problem. Now, the section is called context of the problem, but this is to give you background information to the problem, something that you're not going to talk about later, but something that the audience needs to know beforehand, something important that the audience needs to know about the problem that you're researching, that you need to present. You need to present that in the introduction, and then the last sentence. And the thesis statement, what is the thesis statement?
Introductory sentence to the whole paper.
It's the main idea of your entire essay, the main idea. This is the most important sentence. Now, notice that the thesis statement is one sentence. So the very last sentence of your introduction is the main idea of your entire essay. By the way, all of these things that we're talking here probably also applies to your academic writing class. You can check with your instructor, but this is a fairly standard introduction paragraph that I think would also apply very well to your academic writing class. So the thesis statement is the main idea. Now I'm going to jump to the last paragraph. The last paragraph of our section, the context of the problem. And what do you think we'll include in the last paragraph? First sentence of the last paragraph of, now again, we're just talking about the theory. We're going to restate and reword the thesis statement. Restate and reword. What's the difference? What's the difference when I say restate and reword?
Say the same thing, paraphrase, say the same thing, like support your own idea, but
right. So whatever idea you have here, say the exact same idea, but in other words. Okay. So we're not going to copy and paste word for word. We're going to reword it, but say the same thing. Make sure you say the same idea. In the last sentence of your introduction, in the first sentence of the last paragraph, we're talking only about the theory part of this essay. See? Do this? No? Okay. So we're going to restate and reword the thesis statement. Now, for our purposes here, we want to include the purpose statement. And we want to introduce what? Research questions. So the very last paragraph, we're going to begin by restating the thesis statement. In the thesis statement, you're probably going to mention something about a problem also. So in your notes, I would include in the thesis statement to write a complex or a compound, probably a complex sentence. Not a simple sentence. The difference between a simple sentence, a compound sentence, and a complex sentence. Now we're talking academic writing. This is a statement. Try to write a complex sentence. What is a complex sentence? Do you remember? It has a subordinating clause and one. Right. Now I like to call it main clause, but it's independent clause. So a complex sentence has one main clause, subordinating clause has a subordinating conjunction like although, when, while. Okay? So try to include in your thesis statement the problem, right? Because the whole idea is built around some problem. You know? So in the complex sentence, you're going to mention the problem, and you're probably going to include either the reasons or certain solutions to your problem. Very important. So in your thesis statement, your whole theory should be talking reasons for the problem or possible solutions. The possible solutions can be those interventions, those things you're going to try in your own class, new technology, new methods, new materials, okay, new interactional patterns. Okay, so in the theory, in the thesis, you're going to talk about reasons and possible solutions. Okay. Now, in the last paragraph, we state the thesis statement, we've got our purpose statement, and then introduce the research question. So the last paragraph is like the heart and soul of your entire paper, because it's the transition between the theory and what?
The results.
Sorry? Before the results? The method, the actual, your research. So think of your paper as one part theory over here, and then the rest what? Your research. Your research is your method and your results. It's like two different. What bridges the theory and your research, what you're going to do? This one paragraph, restating the thesis, the purpose of your paper, and most importantly, what? The research questions. Remember in our diagram that we had project? What was in the middle? The research questions, right, was in the middle. And then above we had the problem, and then we had design our research method, remember, collect the data, and then conclude. Okay, so this is the idea. This is the very important paragraph here, all right, that connects the theory to our research questions, so forth. Easy peasy, clear as mud. Okay, we have the introduction paragraph, we have the last paragraph. Now we also have a third type of paragraph, which this is not really in order, but this is what the order is important. Body paragraph, right? Yeah. For our body paragraphs, I like to use an acronym called the meal plan. Meal, M-E-A-L. I like to eat, so it's really easy for me to remember this acronym, the meal plan. And so the M in meal plan stands for what? Another way we can call this main idea. Sometimes I use this term.
Topic sentence.
Yes, topic sentence. Okay, so sometimes I use the word topic sentence. Sometimes I use the word main idea. It's the same thing. Okay, so every body paragraph needs to have a main idea or topic sentence. What's the E stand for? Evidence. What are some other words for evidence? Some synonyms. Sorry? I'm not going to use the word supporting details because actually all the sentences afterwards, after the body paragraph, should be supported. But yes, it is a type of supporting sentence. So evidence, any synonyms that you can think of that also mean evidence?
Examples.
Okay, we can. Okay, proof. Let's try not to use the word proof unless it's a statistical term. Examples, we can say details. Examples, details. I might even say facts. And I'm also going to include here citations. Now, I included the word citations because first of all, we'll need to use citations in our writing. Most of the citations are going to be what type of sentences? What type of sentences? What type of sentences?
View.
What type of sentences? Evidence sentences. Most of the citations are going to be evidence sentences. Most of the evidence is going to be details, experts that come in and say, these are examples, these are details, these are facts, these are numbers. Okay? So try to include in your body paragraphs citations for the evidence. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay? So for example, what's the first sentence typically going to be in a body paragraph? The very first sentence.
Main idea.
Main idea. Okay, so the very first sentence is going to be the topic sentence. Somebody for them?
Yeah.
Okay? All right, so your body paragraph, the very first sentence is going to be your topic sentence. So the very first sentence of your body paragraph, will you ever have, for the purpose of this paper, a citation?
Yeah. Yes. Could be.
Citations are mainly going to be what type of sentence? Evidence. What's the first sentence going to be typically for our body paragraphs?
What? I mean,
Main idea.
yeah.
Okay. So the question is, will we ever have citations as the first sentence of the body paragraph?
No.
No.
Not even as a
Okay, be careful with hooks. All right, I'm going to use the word hook to mean what? To introduce the whole thing, the whole document. I know some of you maybe have tried to think of hooking as like every single body paragraph. We're not going to be doing that in this class. Okay, so we're not going to use the word hook for every body paragraph. We're going to use the hook only once to introduce the introduction of the paragraph. Okay? So, citations, the main thing is try to avoid writing a citation in the very first sentence of a body paragraph. Why? Because that's typically evidence that typically is missing what first? The main idea, right? First, give us the main idea, then give us evidence to say, okay, I have support for this main idea. The main idea is your original idea. Okay, it's a claim. It's your proposition, your idea. It's an idea that you have. Then you will provide evidence to support the idea. After we have written the evidence, now what type of paragraph are we writing? Argumentative.
Yeah.
All right, which type of paragraph?
Mid.
Okay, so we're writing, I'm going to call this a body paragraph. Okay. We typically have three types of paragraphs. We have the introduction paragraph, the body paragraph, and some sort of conclusion. Okay, for our purposes, this is going to be kind of like our conclusion to the theory. Oops, I'm sorry, this last paragraph. Okay, body paragraph, evidence. Do this. Natalia, do this. So after the evidence, we have this A. What does the A stand for?
Analysis.
Analysis. Analyze. What's another word for analyze? Something, another way of thinking?
No, yeah. Your own words, judgment of your thinking.
Okay, I like that interpretation.
Point of view, your point of
Analysis, right? Analysis. You can say interpretation, point of view. You could even be comparing and contrasting. Now, I mentioned that this was an argumentative essay, and it is. You should be forming an argument. But you can also be comparing and contrasting what? What are you going to be analyzing, interpreting, providing a point of view about? I mean, you're going to put commenting. What are you interpreting?
With the
All right? So what we're specifically analyzing, interpreting, providing a point of view about, commenting, comparing and contrasting, what? The evidence to the main idea of that one paragraph.
what are the supporting ideas in the evidence or analysis?
Okay, so what are the supporting ideas in this meal plan? Where are your supporting ideas in this meal plan? Evidence and analysis, and which we'll talk about in a few minutes, the L, which we'll talk about. All of those are supporting sentences. So yes, you must have supporting sentences. But everything that we're talking about here, we're being more specific. What does it mean to support a sentence? Well, we can provide evidence, we can provide analysis, and we'll talk about the L. All of those are 3 different ways that we can support the main idea. That make sense? All right. Now, we have our final sentence, the L, which means link. I'm also going to put in parentheses summary, because sometimes people talk in terms of summarizing the paragraph. So you can also summarize, or you can also link the idea that you have in this paragraph with the idea that comes to the next paragraph. Okay? So we have summary. Summary. Now the linking sentence, I know this is another good opportunity to use it in context. You can use the, what is a complex sentence? It has one main clause and one subordinating clause. So you start with the subordinating clause talking about the idea of the first paragraph, and the main clause to talk about the idea of the next paragraph. It's a good transition using a complex sentence for your linking sentence. All right. All of this should be fairly familiar. Maybe I'm using different terms that you haven't used before, but this is basically what you're learning in academic writing or what you learned in composition. You want to try to organize your ideas in a logical way. This document that we're showing here is the notes that's available in Schoology. If you go into Getting Started, there's a document that's called 8L, it is Linguistics Notes. And you all have access to this document. Okay? All right. Now, the question is, how do I organize my information and my theory? Okay? How do I organize it? Well, you're probably going to have, how many words do we need to include? 800, right? And I think that's at the bottom of our template, right? Let's see. I have, bless you. Thank you. Flora, you don't mind doing this for her? No? She's not here? Okay. Everybody should have, listen, in your template at the bottom, this section for feedback. And here we have approximate word count. So everybody has seen this, correct? Everybody seen the word counts? Okay. So our theory is going to be approximately 800 words, methods 500, and the results 500, discussion. All right. Now, 800 words, I guess the question is, how many sentences more or less should we have in our paragraph? Yeah, I would shoot, and this is just an approximate, this is not like official, but I think if your paragraphs are anywhere from 5 to 8, I think you're going to be in pretty good shape. What you want to avoid is having a paragraph that's 2 sentences. right? Or even one sentence. Now, when I say paragraph, how do I create paragraphs? So, I mean, how do I even identify a paragraph? Yeah, it is. When you create a new line, so for example, when you create a new line in a paragraph, okay, it creates a new paragraph. Okay, so try to make sure that you have anywhere from 5 to 8 sentences in your paragraphs. 5 to 8 sentences in your paragraph. Is that what I said? Or did I say? Okay, sorry. 5 to 8 sentences in your paragraphs. That's a pretty good number to have for each of your paragraphs. The introduction paragraphs and the body of paragraphs. All right, now let's go back to the argument. And this information also is available in Schoology that you can take a look at. I recommend that you do so. You're primarily going to be writing an argumentative essay. You're going to present either solutions or reasons for the problem. This is what you're going to be focusing on in the theory. Think of the solutions as your intervention. What are you trying new? Because you're going to do something different that you think is a possible solution. You don't know if it's going to work, but you want to try it. So in your theory, you need to talk about whatever it is you want to try new. Okay, again, it can be a new technique, new method, new material, okay, new interactional pattern. You want to try more social learning instead of working individually. Okay, so think of the main concepts that relate to what you're going to try to do in your research. Try to choose the main topics that relate to what you're going to try to do in your classroom. That is important. Because we don't want to have a theory that has nothing to do with your research. Okay, it's very much linked. Now I think the challenge is going to be choosing just a few key concepts. Because you're going to want to try to talk about everything under the sun. And you're not going to, it's only 800 words. So 800 words, how many paragraphs is that? Well, it's going to vary, but I'm guessing like, I think it's less than 6. I think it's like more than like 4 or 5, more or less, maybe even 3. I mean, it's not a lot of paragraphs. And you figure one paragraph's the introduction and one paragraph's the conclusion.
So you have one.
Well, you probably have at least 2 to 3, maybe 4 body paragraphs. So think of how many paragraphs more or less you're going to have, and think about which of the key concepts am I going to talk about. Maybe 2 or 3 key concepts only, and develop those key concepts. Yes.
But you mean talk about the key concepts, defining them, or what?
All right. That's a good question because some of you will want to define certain terms. Okay, we can define certain terms, but it's all related to what? I mean, all these concepts that you're talking about is related in general, is related to what? But in general. Improving what?
Practice. Teaching practice.
Okay, so it's improving teaching practice, and it's also to improve learning, language learning. Because we're all within the context of teaching English language learners. So when you find research that focuses on how to improve learning and or teaching practice, you can include that. Now you're going to say, well, I thought you said we need to practice on teaching, not learning. And that's true in your research, what you guys are going to do. But I don't mean to say that all the research that you find, those primary research articles, don't focus on learning. Don't focus on learning, focusing on good teaching practice. So you can have articles that focus on learning. They can be qualitative studies, they can be quantitative, they can be mixed methods, they can be anything that you think is important. Yes?
If we include both, referring to teaching or learning?
In the theory, yes, absolutely. In fact, I would suggest at least one study that says this is a good method or technique or technology that helps language learners in some way, speaking, writing, whatever it is, grammar, phonetics.
What if our topic has nothing to do with technology or whatever?
That's fine.
I-
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm giving you suggestions like all of you are choosing something new that you're going to try to implement in your class. No? You're not trying something new?
Oh.
Yeah, all of you should be trying something different, something new that you haven't tried before. Because if you've already been trying it and you still have this problem, guess what? It probably is not working for you. So this is a good opportunity to try something new. Try something different. Now, it's not just saying, oh, I'm going to try this and just because it feels good. No, because you have a theory. You're going to have some sort of support to say, okay, I'm trying this new thing. Now, the new thing can be technology, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be technology. It can be a new technique. It can be a new method. It can be a new interaction pattern. It can be what else? Anything else? Right. So I just use technology as an example, or materials, or whatever. Any other questions so far? So the hard part, I think, is really narrowing down the concepts. Remember, one paragraph develops one idea. Now, how do you develop one idea? In your notes, next to a body paragraph, write down the question words. What are you going to talk about? What's the main idea, the topic sentence? What is it? How is it? When is it? Whom is it? Maybe even why. Think of the question words to try to develop those ideas in each body paragraph. Now, I'm not saying that you have to talk about all the question words in every paragraph. Maybe you only talk about two, but you develop those two, then that's fine. But don't just talk about what. And this goes back to definitions. Because when you include definitions, what are you including? The what, the how, the when, the where, the why, the whom. What do you, what's with those questions? Typically the what, right? What is this? What is this? Right? So be careful with the what. Be careful with just including definitions. If you want to include definitions, that's fine, but that's only the what. But more importantly, that's probably the least important. What's important? The how? Well, how about that? How does it work? Why does it work? With whom does it work?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, you want to mix it up. You don't want to just have definition, next, definition. You need to, right, and you're going to talk about the how, the what, the why, and the evidence. I don't have it up. The evidence sentences. Right? You're going to have evidence sentences to talk about how it can be applied, why is it applied, right, and so on. Does that make sense? See? Vamos bien? Now, I've included a couple of, we call these reasoning patterns here. And these are ways that you can organize your ideas. Okay? So the one by one, I'm right here, one-on-one reasoning is a way to present one idea and then present another and then compare side by side. This idea and then this idea and this idea. Okay? Jumping down, another common one, side by side. Let's go to chain. Chain reasoning is a sequence of ideas. Okay, I instead of going through all this, I would rather, I think you guys take a look at this first. To not overwhelm you with a lot of information here. I think the main thing is that you first. How many of you have found your 2 or 3 primary research articles? Have you found your articles? Raise your hand if you found 2 or 3 or more primary research articles for your research. Okay. If you have not, and you've really looked hard, and you just can't find them, either we need to have a discussion today, right away, or you need to change your topic. Okay? The thing here is, don't make the mistake of trying to do research when you can't find primary research articles that at least relates to your research. If you keep looking and looking and just can't find anything that relates to what you're doing, change your research. This goes for next semester especially, but also here. Because we need to have 2 to 3 primary research articles in a paper, and you need to have those to help you develop a better research project. Okay. All right. All right. Now, no questions so far on the theory? What to include in your theory? Does everybody kind of have an idea about the main topics that you want to include into your theory? Okay, most of us should be working on our theory now, as according to our schedules. We should be developing our theory. Hopefully we can finish it by the end of this month, September, to give you a general date. Right? How many of you are planning to go to the United States in November? I said how many people are planning or trying to submit the paperwork? I know nobody knows yet. Okay? All right. For those of you who are planning to go to the U.S., I would very much try to finish your data collection by the end of October or middle of October, even bump up and start early collecting your data. Because everything else you can finish online. You can finish while you're in the United States. But it's impossible, it's going to be really difficult, if not impossible, to collect the data when you're in the United States. All right, so remember that the dates that we came up with, they're flexible. If you want to start early and starting collecting your data, go right ahead. Okay? But the main thing is that you allow enough time, at least 3 weeks, to collect your data. Because after 3 weeks, you may decide, you know what, I need another week. I still need one more interview. I still need one more observation. So really try to shoot for 3 weeks and then know that you have another week if needed so that you don't get behind. See? All right. No other questions about the theory?
No.
Do you feel
Yes,
like... Yes.
For example, we talk about spelling, so I need to talk or write something about specifically spelling, or just the program?
All right, so you're using spelling to help with what?
Orthography. I
Or what are you, how are you using, spelling to...
I don't know.
Okay, so the problem is, what is the intervention? What are you trying to do in your research?
And the technique.
All right, and what is the technique? Can you describe the technique?
Word study.
Word study. And what is word study in general?
It's like focus on orthography, like but written and everything.
Okay, so, and correct me if I'm wrong, word study also allows the students to classify certain words, right, or not? Like, maybe they organize words in a certain way? Okay, and how can you organize words? You can classify them either by phonetically, or you can do it by concept. Okay, there's some theories in there. There's theories about, like cognitive theories, about how to organize words. That's what you can talk about. Obviously, you can talk about word study, the technique. But any technique that you choose should be based in some sort of theoretical framework, right? So those are the theories that you can focus on. In your case, Fernanda, it's classification, word classification, a lot of cognitive studies around how to organize words, again, based on sounds, based on concepts. And there's techniques on how to do that, or if they're going to write it out either on a computer, use a computer, or write it out on a notebook. But how can you organize those things? And I'm guessing word study has a lot of variations. Like there's different ways that you can apply it. So think of the different theoretical concepts that surround that technique. How many of you are focusing on a technique? New technique. New for you. Yeah, new for you. This is, I'm not looking for a new technique that nobody's ever tried. New to you. A new technique. Right? Anyone want to share the technique that you're thinking about? Any new techniques that you're going to try?
In my case, to role play.
Role play. The type of activity. Alright, and so what are some theoretical concepts around role plays?
Well, it's related to cognitive language teaching, but it's general, so I'm going to consider some aspects about
What aspects are you want to role plays?
like the main idea of the skill, the teaching that is more focused on.
Alright, so with role plays, what are you focusing on? Is that speaking? So you're focusing on speaking. And are you focusing only on the role play itself or leading up to the role play? Like, what are you preparing for the role play or just the role play itself? Okay. So, what type of information are you going to collect? What are your data sources? And this is a good exercise for everybody. Write out on a piece of paper the technique, the material, the method that you plan to do, and then write out specifically the things that we're sharing here today with Blue's example. So we have role plays, focusing on speaking, data sources.
First, how students speak. Second, discourse analysis to identify different types of plays, like some are more structured than others. So I want to compare the discourse analysis between the role that are freer and the ones that are less more controlled.
So you're going to be looking at, so discourse analysis would be like transactions and exchanges. All right, so discourse analysis, as you guys recall, you guys studied transactions and exchanges? The Bird, what is it? As a Birmingham model, something? Where you have the initiation, the response, and the follow-up. So for example, good morning everybody, what's that? The initiation. Good morning, and then what do you say? Did you say that? So if I say good morning, she replies good morning, so that's the response. So initiation, response, and then I say good. Good is the follow-up, comment. That's an exchange. We just had an exchange. All right? If I say, today we're going to focus on the theory aspect of our thesis, that's the initiation. Okay, and then you may respond, okay, that might be a response, or maybe just a nonverbal, something. So this is what we need to know. This is what you can focus on in your theory. You're doing a discourse analysis. And you're now analyzing the transactions and exchanges. This is what you can include in your theory. What is it? Define it. Use it. Describe any problems that students have. Maybe you find some evidence where students have more problems with the comment, or the follow-up, or the initiation, or whatever. And you can talk about problems related to this. What else? Other thing that you can add here? Another data source? Like fillers, speaking. Like, can they use fillers? Let me see. When they don't know what to say, can they use fillers? You can analyze it. What fillers do they use? See? This is what we need. This is the theory. Role plays from the activity to the theory. Going more specific. This is what each of you needs to try to do when you look at that technique or that activity. What theory surrounds it? Now, we could also talk about social cultural theory if you want to talk about interactional patterns, perhaps, depending on what you're focusing on. Any other examples you want to share? You're not sure about the theory that you want to use or apply to your research? Does everybody have an idea about the theory that you're going to use?
Yeah. Well, I have a question.
Yes.
You say find 3 primary research articles. For example, I have 2 main key concepts. I need to find 3 per concept.
No,
Or as long as okay.
Total.
So as
3
long
total.
as I complete the theory, the 800 words, because I'm stressing articles.
Yeah. I mean, 2 total. This is total, 2 or 3 total, and then you can use books or web pages to complement those.
So in our theory, we have to include 3 or 4 or less aspects related to our main topic.
Okay, so I don't confuse the primary research articles as the number of concepts that you're going to need in your theory. Okay, so because you can use different parts of the article, you can use 2 or 3 citations for one article. So it's not so much the number of articles indicates the number of theoretical concepts. And you need to decide that separately. So you need to decide, okay, this is the main idea. I'm going to talk about 2 topics, 2 main topics, but maybe I need 3 paragraphs.
But they have to be related, they have the main idea.
Yeah, the thesis statement. Yeah, everything's related to the thesis statement. So when you guys write out your thesis statement, ask yourself, what are the 2, the 3 main ideas do I need to talk about to support the thesis statement? Right? And so you might use, the primary research articles just come in whenever you need it. You can have different sites. You might have 3 for one article. That's fine. Okay, any other questions?
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
In the part document, it says that we have to look for at least 8, from 8 to 10 references for
Yes.
theory.
Yes.
But you said that only 3 are.
That's correct. That's correct. Yes.
Oh, you.
The main
3 or 8?
The question is, how many references do I need to include in my paper?
I need 3.
How many references? How many references should I include in the whole paper, Between 8 to 10, I'd say, or at least 8.
8.
De esos mínimos.
References, pay attention to the words that are used here. References. Now we have different types of references, right? What's one type of reference? Primary research article. That's like the best one. Another type of reference.
Secondary sources.
A book. Yes, secondary research, but a book.
Websites.
What's another type of reference?
Internet.
Yeah.
A website that is reliable, that is reliable, that is valid. And how do we know? Typically, websites that are not what? .com. And are we going to use? Are we going to have a reference with the Wikipedia or any encyclopedia or any dictionary? No way. Right. So no dictionaries, no encyclopedias in the references. We need to have at least 8 references with at least 2 to 3 what? Primary research.
So we have those many references even if we don't use them in the theory.
Good question. So you have your 8 to 10 references at the bottom. Do you need to have a citation, at least one citation for each reference that you have at the bottom?
No.
Absolutely. The other side, the other flip side. Do I need to have a reference down at the bottom if I use a citation at the top?
Yeah.
Now, the question is, do I absolutely have to have all 8 that link to the references in the theory? Not necessarily. Okay. For example, you could have maybe 1 or 2 citations in the method section. For example, if you guys are using an instrument from another research, you might have a citation in the method section that maybe you don't mention in the theory. That's okay. But I would say most of the references need to be cited in the theory. Most of them. Maybe 6 if you want a number, 6 at least in the theory. But it's possible to have 1 citation or 2 perhaps in the method section when you're using another instrument. Okay. So are we okay with references, citations, primary research articles?
Yes.
Good. All right. I think we'll conclude with that. On Wednesday, we're going to have 1 hour that we're going to start on time. And please be here on time because we're going to be recording, just like we recorded today. We're going to have a live hangout with some other teachers, and you're going to have an opportunity to ask questions and to participate. I'm sending a lot of information in Schoology, but the topic is going to be about portfolios and e-portfolios. All right, that's the general topic. So be thinking of some questions that you might ask. I really want you guys to participate, ask questions during the hangout. But we're also going to be listening to other educators talk. But I want you involved in the conversation, so please come with some questions that you might want to ask. And obviously, if you have questions during that originate from the actual talk, obviously. Yes.
Topics have seen so far.
I'm sorry?
Topics, I mean, questions about the topics we have seen so far.
Well, they're going to be topics mainly related on Wednesday. They're going to be related primarily to the e-portfolios. Now, this is not something we've talked about specifically. This has been. I have an opportunity to. I scheduled this thinking with you guys in mind about just the general topics of language teaching. So the topics aren't necessarily related to, for example, an e-portfolios we have talked. But I'm sure you might have some ideas and perspective and opinions about it. So this is something that you can hear from others and also ask and get involved in the conversation. So please be here on time on Wednesday, and we'll be set up probably like this as well. It's going to be difficult to get everybody in the camera. We might even set up back here. So yeah, we can. Yeah. In fact, we'll probably do that. So on Wednesday, we'll set up with all of you guys kind of back here as much as possible so that we can get as much of you on camera because it's going to look more or less like this. Well, not like that. It's going to look like this. Now the video is going to be horrible because the resolution on the screen. I'm going to try to call or tech people to fix this. But all of you need to be more or less like in this area. Okay, so you can be as much in the video as possible. But yeah. And everything that we talked about today is also going to be recorded, so you can access. I'll upload the link to Schoology where you can find this video.